Wow, today was a hectic day. After running around, trying to go house hunting, figuring out how my family and I can find an affordable property that we could truly build a Bayis Nemam B'Yisrael L'Shem multi-ferris that has a backyard and a swing set. Nothing fancy, but just enough to have the in-laws over, but also keep them at arm's distance. Keep the parents at arm's distance, but be able to have guests. Be able to have, really, it's about having the grandparents. So they can come and give hugs and kisses to the grandkids. And everyone should live and be well to get there, and we believe in the Almighty, Nacheni Hashem, that we will be led to the Promised Land. But until that point, as I sit here in the Motivation Congregation studios at 6:53 on Thursday, December 12th, it's been a hectic day of meeting different agents, calling different realtors, mortgage brokers, figuring out what different fees and closing costs are, possible issues, and what can you do about construction loans, and trying to access certain amounts of cash and mortgage rates. It was getting overwhelming, and almost no time was going to be left to record the weekly Parsha podcast 2024, Tafshin Pei Hey of Parshas Vayishlach. So I decided I'll put pen to paper, I'll take the notes, figure out what I want to say and how to say it, and then we'll hit record. And we won't apologize for any content that is either stretches a bit too far or is a bit underdone, because this is a moment of solitude, a moment of LEVADO, a moment of, well, when all else fails and when life gets hectic, put on the headphones, press record, figure out what the Gemara in Sanhedrin means, what the Rashi means, and what lesson is behind here, and submerge yourself, immerse yourself in the brilliantly plentiful and rejuvenating waters of Hashem's holy Torah. So let us begin with a couple questions. It's a good place to start. Ladies and gentlemen, today I bring to you unapologetically and unequivocally the answer to the following questions. Number one, how do you define success, victory, triumph? What is it? Is it when you accomplish something? How do you define question number two, if you are a smart person? Is it based on IQ? And how do you describe your physical strength? Are you a strong person? Really, if you see the underpinnings of these questions, it's all in one area, and we could keep going. But always beginning a talk with questions to make something personal to someone's a good place to start. But really, it's all boiled into, in today's generation, when there's so much at our fingertips and we can accomplish so much, and we want success, well, can we concretize it, define it, and figure out in one single sentence what hatzlacha in smarts, strength, and financial success is? And the answer is yes. Now let us begin. It was that same night that he arose, taking his 2 wives and his maidservants and the 11 sons, and he crossed the ford of the Yabok River. Yaakov taking them across the stream, across with his possessions. But then Jacob was left alone. Vayavoser Yaakov levado. And out of nowhere, a figure turns up. The Sarah shel Esav, the spirit of his evil brother Esau. And the figure wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And when he saw that he could not prevail against him, he wrenched Jacob's hip, knocked it out of its socket, strained him. And they wrestled until he said, "Now let me go, for dawn is breaking." But he answered, "I will not let you go unless you first give me a bracha," said Jacob. "What's your name?" They exchange a couple more pleasantries. Yaakov, as the sun rises, limps on his hip, continues on his journey. And we get the mitzvah of, therefore, the Jewish people should not eat this thigh muscle, the sciatica nerve where Jacob was hit, Yaakov Avinu was hit by the Malach. Commentators discuss why we don't eat it. But the mitzvah of Gid Asher, the third and final mitzvah of Sefer Parshas. But I'd like to focus on what Chazal find to be a very unique attribute and something that defines the Jewish people in our history and defines success. It's the Hebrew words of Parak Lamed Beis, Pasuk Chav Hei, Vayavoser Yaakov LEVADO. Yaakov left alone. The lone wolf. And solitary. Unattended. Available for attack. The Ye'evok. They dusted and they fought. Ishimo Adalos HaShachar. Yaakov was left alone. Vayavoser Yaakov LEVADO. These words, Rashi points out he's left alone. And why is he alone? Because he had forgotten some small jugs, some jars he'd left back on the other side of the fork or the ford of the Yabok River. He went back to get them after he ferried over his family already. And now he's left alone. But Chazal see here an attribute that defines Yaakov Avinu in that he is a character who is levado. He is alone at this moment. And this moment of destiny where he's fighting with this enemy force, so much of what Gullus represents is so coming through here as to being left alone in a diaspora, fighting against Esau's descendants. Yaakov remained alone. Chazal say that there's this attribute called levado. What does it mean? Parshas Rabbah 71:1, Ayin Aleph. Rabbi Barachia b'shem Reb Simon Omar, something unbelievable. Ein Koel umi Koel Yeshurun Yisrael Saba. There is none like God. But who is like God? If we had to compare, it would be Yeshurun. It would be Israel. It would be Yaakov the elder. How is Yaakov like God? Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kasuv Bo in Yeshaya, Beis Yud Zayin. It's written by the Almighty, V'niskav Hashem levado, Hashem levado Yoimahu, that Hashem on that day will be exalted alone. V'niskav Hashem levado, unchaperoned, partnerlessness. Totally self-sufficient, solo, lone, single. That is the godless and glory of Hashem. Af Yaakov has this attribute. Vayavoser Yaakov levado. His own entity. An island of sorts. He is levado. Rabbi Yeruchim points out in a very deep piece that this year, after talking to a good friend, he kind of said something in passing. It ended up cluing me in and tipping me off to maybe what Rabbi Yeruchim means here. That this deep idea that Hashem is alone. He does not require anything else. He cannot be compared. He is Yachid Ba'olamo. He is Vayihi Erev Yivoker Yom Echad. He is Echad. He is one. Ve'enol Novado. There is this attribute that can be compared to that, and that Yaakov Avinu also manifested and embodied, called being alone, self-sufficient, not needing anything else, not comparing himself to anyone else. This theme of levado-ness, of self-sufficient, being your own world, Yachid Be'olamo, is actually a very popular concept and something that you'll see is all over the Torah and something required of us as we begin here to understand what this idea of being levado is. You are surely aware of Kimireis Tsurim Irenu Migvos Ashurenu Henenam Levadod Yishkain Uvagoyim Lo Yischashov. That Bilam says that he gazes on them from the heights and from the mountaintops, and there is a people that dwells apart, not reckoned amongst the other nations. Targum Yonason says that why will they merit the future world? They live alone. Asidin lemachsen alma. They will inherit the future world. Why? Mitol de benimuse umya loy madberun. That these people, behold, they are able to possess the future world because they also dwell alone. They don't follow the rules of others. They do not follow the same goals, aspirations, political agendas, and social cravings, success that the rest of the worlds follow. They have their own sort of success, their own scale and barometer of hatzlacha. That's how they measure their own wins and losses, totally different. They, because of this attribute of hein am levado yishkon, being levado, being dwelling alone, that is what enables the inheriting of paradise for us. Again, the concept of levado. Psachim. Masechta Psachim, tractate Paschal lamb. I don't know what it's called. Psachim, Pesachs. I'm not even sure what that word means. But the Gemara says, in a rather exciting Gemara, as to figuring out some background of what happened when Avram was thrown into the Kivshon Ha'esh. The Gemara is talking about what happened when Avram Avinu was thrown into the fiery furnace by Nimrod. And the angel said, let us go down and do something. Hashem said, Ani yachid ba'olam, me, I am one. I am singular. I am not compared, alike, reckoned to anything else in the world. I am one. Vehu yachid ba'olamo, and he is also his own world. No'ele yachid lahatzelas hayachid. It is only fitting for the unique one to save the unique one. I think we can put a pause on the more proofs of this concept of being a yachid, of being levado. But Rabbi Yeruchim explains. It became something that also came to my attention after an entire chapter dedicated to this topic was found in Rabbi Lopiansky's new incredible work, Ben Yeshiva, The Pathway of Aliyah. That success is had, proper goals are established. When you internalize that you are a yachid ba'olamo, you are levado. And not that you are not dependent upon everyone else. That's not what we mean. You may be dependent, and maybe that's not the comparison exactly of Hashem and us, because Hashem obviously does not depend upon anything else. But the drift, what Chazal mean to be showing us, that V'niskov Hashem levado and also Vayavosar Yaakov levado, is that a Jewish person is one in his world, and that success is had when he accomplishes that which is success only in his world. Let me explain. In Koheles Dalad Dalad, we hear, V're'isi ani es kol amal v'es kol kishron ha'maisa ki hi kinas ishmereu gam zehevel ru'us ruach. That Ecclesiastes notes that what's futile is that skillful enterprises, that hatzlacha in this world is all based on man looking over his shoulder. And the Evan Ezra comments that roiv omal ha'adam, most of what a person does, gam kishron masayim, all that he is intending to do, endeavoring to accomplish, bavur b'nei ha'adam shiakanu zeh b'zeh, is because this is jealousy of one person to the next. Not the type of jealousy of, oh man, I wish I had that, but the type of jealousy that we call envy, comparing notes, to have a certain amount of looking over your shoulder of how do I measure up subconsciously in society. That type of kinna is being discussed here, says Rabbi Lopiansky. And therefore that leads to all of your grind and hustle is because of the yirtzeh le'aspire. You don't want to be left back, held back in al chavero, lesser, less adequate, less successful than your friends. V'shelo yehu chaser mimenu. You don't want to be left lacking in comparative ways, compared and contrasted from you to your friends. The Even Ezra gets very, very specific. B'di Russo, who has the biggest house on the block, is how you will define your house. Uma'abushav, which designer are they wearing? How fancy are their clothes? Well, that's how you will define how nice their clothes are. When you show up at the Pesach program, what style are people wearing? Which tie? It's all based on comparing as to what society is wearing and where you are on the hierarchy of Hatzlacha in that category. Ubanov, how do you measure up with your kids? Well, my kids went to Brisk. My kids went to BJJ. My kids graduated from Yale, Harvard, Penn. Uma'acholo. You guys had chicken on Shabbos? Chicken on the bone? Yeah? We have lamb chops. You think you're smart? You think your IQ is this? My IQ is that. You got this score on the SAT? Let me compare and see how I did in this comparative between two worlds of two people, envy and jealousy, that they're only measuring success based on where society's average is, where the medium is, and where we fall on that track in comparing where we are to others and how society defines success. B'tov Hashem, how well known are you? You make a chasana, how many people will show up? If you put your name on the invitation, that he'll be there to shake your hand, how well respected are you? That's not living levado. That is society's definition of success. To juxtapose, to differentiate two different items that are set side by side, how they balance up, how everyone weighs up, who's smarter, who's better. That is the opposite of levado. Being in your own world where success is defined based on, well, let us describe actually in perfect, clear, scintillating clarity how success is defined. Now that hopefully it's clear how we do not define success. The Gemara Sanhedrin, Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, Lefikach Nivra Adam Yechidi. A person is created singularly. Isn't that interesting? Nobody is like you. There's only about 4 or 5 different facial features that could change. We're only working with a nose and eyes, some cheeks, some ears, some hair. But yet, with the very, very few facial features, even the slightest little twitch, 1 millimeter in this direction, and the entire world, billions of people, nobody looks the same. As they say that there's an endangered species in the world, every single individual is an endangered species, Reb Shlomo Volba would say, Reb Yaakov Volba, his great-grandson, truly would say. There's nobody like you. You got to save the whatever your name is because you're the last of your kind. Otherwise, you will go extinct forever. The Gemara says, why were you created, unique, special, different, even if that's weird, even if that's obese, even if that's somebody that's lacking intelligence, but nobody else is like you? L'lamdecha, to teach you? Shekol hama'abe nefesh achas mi-Yisrael ma'al olav ha'kosav ki'ilu oived oilam molei. If you hurt one person, you murder one person, you have wrecked the entire world. V'chol ha'mekayim nefesh achas mi-Yisrael ma'al olav ha'kosav ki'ilu kiyam olam molei. You save one person. You sustain one Jewish soul from the Jewish people. It is ascribed to you. It is credited to you. It goes into your bank account as if you have sustained an entire world, because each individual person is a yachid bifnei atzmo, and success in that world cannot be defined by comparing it to anyone else. The type of mindset that's needed to be Vayavasar Yaakov Levado to define success. It's like the Gemara says, Anida, even if everyone says you're a Russia, there's an oath that you have to make before you come into this world, and you begin to graduate from University of Fetus into University of Olam Hazeh. Afilu kol ha'olam kula omrim lecha tzadik, even if everyone tells you that you're righteous. Ata haya beinecha kerasha. you should still be in your eyes like a Russia. That's a little weird. Because, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what anyone else says, how anyone would compare, none of that is heard because each person is an olam male. And the way to define success, Ben Zoma tells us. He says it in concrete, easy-to-know terms. Ezahu chacham, how do you define success? How do you answer the question of defining what you are as a yachid b'fnei atzmo, how smart you are? Listen to this. The Maharal makes this point. How smart are you? Halo made mikol adam. It has nothing to do with how you compare to anyone else, but totally on the opposite end of the spectrum. If you in your world choose to say, what can I absorb? What can I stand to become smarter with? There's no one else here that you go so far as to say that Halomi Mikol Adam, I actually in my world want to grab everything that I can to become a smarter person. That level of flipping it on its head, Mikol Malam de Hiskalti, that's a chacham. How do you define strength? Is it how you weigh up against somebody else? Or Hakovesh es Yitzro, says Ben Zoma. You against yourself, the man in the mirror. Strength is how naturally weak are you in your battle with yourself. There's no division or rivalry against another team that needs to be beat. It is just you in your world. A gibor umoshel beruche meloiched ir. That strength. And to be wealthy. Which tie are you wearing? How large is your house? Immediately you've crossed into comparing. And now you're no longer a yachid b'fnei atzmo, a yachid ba'olamo. You're not nivra yachidi anymore. But Ben Zoma says, hasameach bechelko. It's not some sort of, well, you're a nebuch, you don't have much money, so you might as well be happy with what you got. But hardly that. Somebody who is so blind to the outside world that only knows what he has because that's what God gave him. And what does that mean? That you have your own world with your own obligations in your world. So clearly God gave you whatever it is that you need, not a penny less and not a penny more. And you understand in your world that that sustains everything to get to your goal. That level of prospering that is totally independent. That's ashirus. That's wealth. And let's put it into one concrete sentence to define everything that we see in this Mishnah. And this is how eloquently Rabbi Lopiansky put it. How do you measure a person? How do you measure your success? Well, it is simple. The percentage of each person's mission in this world that he accomplishes is the measure of who he is. Again, you're in your own world. And you have a job, and it is not comparative to anyone else. It cannot be contrasted. It is just you versus you with an obligation, and you've been given everything that you need. So, the percentage of each person's mission that he accomplishes in his world is the measure of who he is. It is totally based on if I have an ability to learn and I push myself to understand, well, can you have an honest conversation with God and say, I've done my all and I know it? Then you are an absolute stud. Your IQ level? What someone else asked in Shir? That's in a different planet. It has absolutely nothing to do with planet Earth. That's all on planet Mars. How to get into the wild card race and win the pennant. You have to beat other teams, and at least if you aren't the worst team, but you can slip in by the wild card. That's all comparing and trying to outdo and become someone that makes the playoffs and has success and becomes the champion. You don't have to have the most wins. You just need to beat them at their game. That is all the opposite of what being LEVADO means. I judge myself based on what I have to do in this world and how much I have accomplished out of that mission. That is Hatzlacha. What Yenim does, what Yenim says, which people are jealous and pushing themselves to unhealthy extremes because they're comparing and contrasting and jumping from planet to planet. That is the antithesis of living as Heim an LEVADO yishkoin v'achgoyim lo yischashov. To be an olam yechidi means I had a good day if I can honestly say that I pushed myself in my struggles, I looked myself in the mirror and overcame some sort of attribute in a healthy way, in a slowly progressing way, with my koiches, with my attitude. If we had this mindset, there would be no low self-confidence issues. There would be no such sort of struggle with my self-worth and my self-image. That only begins when somebody begins to compare as if there's some sort of norm of what's supposed to be. That's treif, that's false. That's like the chazir. It is totally showing and flaunting and schnorring and overlapping and meshing. Life's like Passover. We don't mish. We don't go to other people's houses. We don't. In the world of ruchnius, we don't. You do what you have to do with your blinders on to accomplish your goal. And what Yenim thinks, what friends say, what others may critique you about, well, they don't know, and they probably are not even half as clear about your understanding of that I am a yachid b'fnei atzmo, and I have a job in this world, and I'm pushing that accomplishment further and closer to the intended outcome and accomplishing of my goals. That's what it means. Vayivosar Yaakov LEVADO. He redefined success. He lived in his own world of not anything else of the social wants and norms. LEVADO, that he said, and the Avos continue to say, Yesh li kol, I have everything, even if they don't have a dime to their name, a penny to their name, a pruta to their name. Not even an Iser Italki. Because they knew that what I need to do in this world, I'm clear about. What my jobs are. And if my heart's beating and I'm working towards that goal, then it matters not what anyone else thinks or how they value success. Because ha'olam, ha'adam, nivra, yechidi. I'm in my own world. I am be'olamo. That's what it means, Vayivosar Yaakov LEVADO. That's what it means. That just like Avram Avinu is a yachid and Hashem is a yachid, there's this attribute of being alone. Alone in the world in the most beautiful, peaceful way. Struggling through the dark of night, but with such a clarity of where you're supposed to be and moving towards accomplishing that. Vayivosar Yaakov LEVADO. You can always look to family members and friends for help, but don't ever compare your jobs, compare your IQs, compare your car, compare your house, compare your spouse. You live in your own world. You have your own obligations. Vayivosar Yaakov LEVADO, LEVADO, LEVADO. That is the world that you live in, and now how we define success. Internalize it, repeat it over and over and over. The percentage of each person's mission that he accomplishes in his world, that's how you define success, and no other way. Take that mindset and then see how happy you are, how great life is, how fulfilling it is, and how you can't wait to wake up every single morning to accomplish another percentage of what your mission is in your world.
Kilam